All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the third day of Assistive Technology Week. Today we have RJ Cooper presenting on switches and other technology that can make gaming and electronics accessible to people with limited mobility. RJ Cooper is an inventor, technologist, and a student of human behavior. He has devoted his entire life to find customized solutions to solve the mobility, communication, and quality of life challenges faced by all ages with any special need. His interest in the field of assistive technology began over 30 years ago when he was studying to become an electrical engineer at the University of Utah. When he began his career, many people realized the potential technology would have on the lives of those with special needs. His love for people and interest in special needs drove him to also pursue a bachelor's in developmental psychology from University of California and a master's in education, concentration in autism spectrum disorder from Arizona State University. He continues to listen to your requests and adapts technology to meet your special needs. If you guys have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat feature on Facebook or the Q&A feature on Zoom. I'll be reading your questions to him at the end of the presentation. I'm now going to pass it over to you, RJ.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is RJ Cooper, and there is my picture. That's all you need to see of me, though. Boy, I'm getting old. I've been doing this since 1983, so a lot of people, I'm very gratified that a lot of people view me as one of the founders of our field, assistive technology, although there were a few people before me, but they've all either passed or retired. There's a few still dabbling, but I'm one of the originals still out there. I'm going to go to share screen here. First of all, is there a way to tell how many people are actually listening in? Reagan?
Yes, down by participants and then also on Facebook Live. I don't think you'll be able to see that, but I can definitely give you all the numbers later.
Well, that's okay. So it looks like we have about 4 people that are participating through here, and then anybody through Facebook Live. Yeah, I would be interested in knowing approximately how many people might have tuned in by Facebook Live.
Absolutely.
That would be great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to give about a 30-minute presentation here. Nice and simple. There we go. So this is the gist of things right here, how switches and other tech can make gaming and using other electronics, computers, tablets, and phones accessible to people with limited mobility or dexterity. And I'll be mostly focusing this morning on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and that includes subsequent generations of these devices, such as the Xbox S, as in Sam, or Xbox X, as in X-ray, and then the PlayStation or PS 5, 4 and 5. So these electronics that I'm talking about today are compatible with those guys. So we'll minimize that. So this is the type of technology. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Reagan, can you confirm you can see this young man playing his band? Great.
Yeah.
So here we have this was back about 10 years ago, maybe more than that even, when Guitar Hero and Rock Band were a thing. And people would, their kids would learn about my music and maybe your music back from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I remember coming home one day and my daughter knew the words to some Journey song that she had no knowledge of, I thought, but she learned the song through Rock Band or Guitar Hero. So we started adapting these Guitar Hero guitars. As you can, Reagan, are you able to see my cursor move also or not?
Yes, I can definitely see that.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. And so we have adapted this so that in the strumming motion, which normally would be the I can't remember exactly what it operated. I think it was the bass drum. That's what the strumming motion would actually operate. And so we switch adapted the strumming motion so that when this young man clicked his switch up here next to his cheek, one of my favorite places to put a head switch, then that would let him participate, or what I call collaborate, in this nice little band here. And as you can see, it really worked. We did this for about 100 kids around the world. So I'm going to minimize that. And then over the years, we did the same thing for, well, the iPod came out before the iPhone. And the iPod, we made a box, and inside the box, we took a remote for an iPod that worked by infrared at the time. And we made it so that people with limited mobility could operate it, or we even put switch inputs in the back so that people with different switch capabilities could control their own music. So very simple concept there, but very few people actually do things of this nature. There's another, let me get up here. There we go. There we go. Now you can really see the switch inputs in the back here so that a switch can perform the function of one of the buttons on top here for people that were more involved. Now, obviously, 5 switches, if they weren't buttons of this nature, 5 switches, well, that's a lot. Even in all my years, I've only run across several instances where somebody could actually do 5 different parts of their body to yield 5 different switch clicks. So that's not often how things work here. Most of the time, it's 1 or 2 switches to accomplish as much as you can. Now, when it comes to each switch having its own function, and if they're only doing 1 or 2 switches, then you have to choose carefully what each switch is going to do in order to get some functionality, or what we saw with Guitar Hero was collaborative functionality, where the user is operating their 1 or 2 switches to do their functions, and then other collaborators are doing their instruments or switches or buttons or iPod or game controller to collaborate to accomplish whatever fun they're trying to have. So I'm going to come back here. Let's do this one right here. So this that I'm pointing to right here, this white box right there, for Xbox One, S and X, and PlayStation 4 and 5, when Microsoft produced this about, I'm going to say about 4 years ago now, probably 3 to 4 years ago, fairly recent though. And this is called the Xbox Adaptive Controller. It's $99 if you get it at like Best Buy or the Microsoft Store or a variety of other places online. And it's a small box, about 12 inches wide by 6 inches deep by only 1 inch tall. Let's go to the back here. I think this is going to be a, nope, not that picture. Give me a second. There it is. There we go. So this is the rear of the Xbox controller, and you can see it's a mouthful. There's a lot of switch inputs there. And that's because if we look at an actual Xbox, this is an older one from an Xbox 360, the generation before the current generations. So this Xbox 360 is around probably 4 years old also, right around there. And that lasted about probably 5 years when that was popular. Then there was PlayStation 3 was popular right around this time. But as you can see, just like with the music box that we saw a moment ago, there's more than 1 or 2 things to be done. And if you've only have control over 1 or 2 things, then you can't independently do this task or fun or activity. So in this instance right here, the game controller, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons on top. And usually in a game, most games today, this lets you change out, I hate to say it, but still most of these games are what we call first-person shooter games, or FPS, first-person shooter, where you're walking around shooting things or doing something of that nature. And this lets you change what gun you have. It's horrible to say, but that's the #1 video game genre is Warcraft games and violent games and stealing cars games. It's out there. So I'm not making any moral qualifications. I just do my job. There's also 4 buttons in the back here to be operated by a person's index finger or middle fingers. And then there's the thumbsticks that provide the movement. The left usually provides the movement of your character through the game, and the right one usually controls a camera view, which lets you look in different directions than you're moving. Personally, I can't do that. I move, I'm an old Pac-Man guy, so I move and I just have a front view for my camera, but there are people that can move forward and look sideways, and then they could hit other buttons. But the moral of this story is that there are many more buttons to operate than just 1 or 2 switches could ever allow us to do in a game. And don't think you can scan through these choices either. These games operate quickly and you can't control the speed for the most part. Rock Band and Guitar Hero had special modes you could put them in, a learning mode, and that put them at like half speed so that people like the young man we just saw, they could actually participate at a speed they could do. Otherwise, at regular speed, it would be impossible for someone to use switches to keep up with the action. But the point here is that at this point in the game of gaming, we had to choose 1 or 2 things for the special needs, person with special needs to accomplish. And somebody else held the controller and did all the rest. So we would call that, collaborative gameplay. And a lot of times shooting the weapon or jumping over a car or sprinkling some dust. In other words, the main action, that's what we would have our special needs user perform. And somebody else would operate all the rest of it here. So that's what I did for many years, probably 15 years. I just modified existing game controllers because I couldn't really get into having a switch or another control operate other parts. It was just too complicated electronically. And then things got smaller. See if I can get out here. Here we go. Nope, not that one. There it is. That's the one I wanted. So I wanted to give greater accessibility to people with special needs. So I made this, I can't even remember what I call this here, but it's a box that the controller attaches to. And the 4 buttons in the back, which were the most problematic of the game controller functions, buttons, I broke those out. I wired into this thing and I broke those out. So this stands for left button, right button, left trigger, right trigger. And those are the 4 buttons in the back here that would normally be controlled by somebody's index and middle fingers. This was popular for a while. Another thing that this allowed us to do was we didn't have to hold the game controller in our hands. That was a problem in and of itself. Just get the device out of their hands so they could free up their hands or other body part to do what they need to do rather than just hold the controller, which was really problematic. So this held the controller so that somebody with only one-handed operation could actually operate completely independently the whole game. Minimize that. We'll minimize that. We're moving along here. Beautiful. Going to come back here just to remind you. So this one is for music. You can see the 5 buttons. Once again, people with special needs that need to use switches aren't usually going to be able to do the buttons. So we would have them do my 2 biggest functions in music. Well, there's the play pause and there's next song. Those are the 2 biggies in my opinion. And out of those, personally, I like the next button. If you only have 1 switch, I would choose that to cycle through our songs. Play pause, not that big a deal. It's nice if somebody comes in the room and you say, could you stop the music? But the real power here would be in them selecting their music, and that would be the next song button. People usually don't get the volume buttons as switches. They set the volume at one level and then they just move along. Cool. So anything else there? Okay, so we're ready to go into this. We're going to play a video here that lasts about 2.5 minutes. And I'm going to make it full screen here. Hi, this is RJ Cooper again, talking about my new controllers for Xbox One and PlayStation 4. I've made 5 different units here. This is my small joystick box, because it's in a box, and 4 buttons that we can plug in that will equal 4 actions that you choose. This one is 4 directional arrows to accomplish the same thing as the joystick, and then 4 buttons again, like these 4, to accomplish whatever you choose. Or we have a very limited version here with just the 4 buttons that can do different actions. Or we have one with just the 4 directional arrows.
RJ, are you still there?
One more item is my small joystick standalone version. And you notice that the joystick here and here is very similar to that found on a power chair. I did that on purpose. Once again, the Xbox adaptive controller is necessary. I also provide an adapter for an option for PlayStation 4. And that lets everything work for moving your character around within a game. Right now, any one of these going through here is plugged in for movement. If we plugged into the USB port here on the Xbox adaptive controller, that would be for controlling the camera. Usually we really don't need to do that when we're playing a game with a challenged person. And with the adaptive controller, you can set up a feature called Copilot, which lets a regular controller work as well as one of these guys. So we can play collaboratively. One person could be controlling the movement of the character, while our disabled person might be controlling some of the functions within the game.
So last year, I paid nothing for electricity, and I actually made money, but
There we go. Nice little video here. I'm going to come back to here. That video, should you want it or want to view it right there, copy it there. Now let's see if I can. Oh, I can. Chat. There we go. So I've put the link to that video in the chat area, and that should get to everybody, correct, Reagan?
It only went to me, but I will make sure it gets out to everyone right now. I'll change it.
Oh, there's an everyone. Hang on. I'll do it, try it again here. How about that time? Okay, that worked. Good, good, good. Okay, we'll get it out of the chat here. Good, we're almost done. Nice and quick. I like ending early. Most people do. So that pretty much takes care of the games. As I said before, many of the games, if not most, are very violence oriented. However, there's hundreds and if not thousands of games that are akin to the old Frogger or Meteor or even Pac-Man. And there's even actual Pac-Man for Xbox One. You don't have to buy an old console in order to play Pac-Man. You can get that game for newer consoles. Most people don't, though. They get something more dark. Problems with the dark ones are that literally are dark. Bad contrast. The colors are not really optimized for people with special needs. The busyness of the screen is not clear. You don't have clear backgrounds, just too busy to really make out even what's happening. The action most of the time is very small, so you can't even tell what you're really controlling. I don't know if you've tried to play one of these games lately, but even though graphically they're much more realistic these days, for special needs, they're problematic. Okay, last thing we're going to touch on here. Oh, there's another one right here. Right there. This is a joystick that I've made off of a commercial joystick that I've changed over the years. This one I've been using for about 15 years now, Logitech Attack 3. And then I modify it so that we can plug a switch in to be one of the buttons or two of the buttons, however many we need. And the joystick itself is about 8 inches across by 8 inches tall, 8 inches square at the base. So it's a larger joystick, different than the smaller joystick that we were looking at before on the table with all the other devices. And then people started asking, this was for computer. And then some people asked me if I could adapt this for Xbox and PlayStation. And of course, I took that challenge. And yes, now this is adapted now so that we could plug this into the Xbox adaptive controller. And this can be our movement and 4 of our functions here, either in the buttons themselves or independent switches. Now the switch here, I have plugging into the Xbox, into the Logitech. But if you remember, on the back of the Xbox adaptive controller, we also can plug switches in directly to be any of the functions, including, if I remember correctly, movement of the character. So you can have a switch be movement of the character without one of my adaptations, just by using the Xbox adaptive controller. But then you'd have to have independent switches for every function. And as I mentioned before, that's just not possible. It's too many switches. Not many people I've met over the years that can do more than 2 switches. Another thing about the Xbox adaptive controller, there we go, right there, is you would think what I would have done if I was Microsoft, I would let these 2 round pads be the thumbsticks of a controller, so that as I move my hand around on these, that would move my character, but they're not. These are just 2 big buttons. So as far as the Xbox adaptive controller itself allowing greater access, well, other than the switch inputs, and I can't remember if you can plug a switch in to be one of the thumbsticks. I don't think you can, but I'm going to have to check on that. But the Xbox adaptive controller in and of itself didn't provide much independence. That may be why either you've never heard of it or you don't see it around a lot. But it does allow one of my controllers to plug into an Xbox One or a PlayStation where that wouldn't have happened before. So as an in-between, it was a godsend. This right here, for those of you that get involved with PlayStation, this is an Xbox to PlayStation adapter for any of the Xbox, the newer ones, the One, the S, and the X, going into a PlayStation 4 or 5. And it's just magic, it just works. So you plug your device, my device actually, into the Xbox controller. You plug the controller into the adapter. You plug the adapter into the PlayStation. And as they say in the UK, Bob's your uncle. Now, the last thing, that's just a great picture. I ask my customers, clients, users to send me more pictures like this, but people, once they buy stuff from me, they just move along. Sometimes they communicate, a lot of times they don't. But I'm happy when people send me pictures like this because it makes me really feel like I'm doing something on this earth. And just pictures of my device by themselves, they don't do much for me. But pictures like this, 88-year-old mom of somebody, I don't remember who, but those really make me feel like I'm earning my keep. Or like this one, out in the car, he's controlling the audio of the car. Or this one. They make me definitely feel my worth. So for you people out there that might be listening, I really hope that you'll send me pictures of happy people using something that I've created from nothing and made somebody happy. That would be super. Okay, lastly, I'm going to go home here. Let's go here. Oh, streaming. There we go. There we go. So I go after the holes in our market. Our market is the assistive technology market. And I go after those places that other people are not going, other companies, or they're not going as inexpensively as I do, whatever, they have their reasons. But I go for what I call holes in the market where I don't have that much competition because I'm a small fry. I started as a small fry. I'm still a small fry. I'm the only developer over all these years that's actually out there trying these things, listening to you guys, responding to people's requests and coming up with ideas on my own also to really meet a need. And then I really listen to feedback. And if somebody comes up with a good suggestion or need for change, I'll usually do it that day and try to get it out that day to them so they can tell me whether I'm on target or not. So one area, gaming, we've covered a little. Music, we've covered a little. Two other areas that I wanted to cover. One I'll do now, but another one is TV, and the other one would be phone. Those are the biggies that you want to try to cover. And I haven't even touched on the computer itself. But over the years, I've really lately focused on these around the house activities that just can't be done without my stuff. Just can't be done. So this is a box that controls streamers. So streamers, this is a Netflix screen. Streamers, Netflix, Hulu, there's so many out now. I can't believe how many are out, but they're all what I call menu driven. You have to be able to operate a menu. And just like the Xbox controller, the Xbox games, you can't do it with one or two switches unless you're scanning. And that could take a long time, or it might not work at all. There's many activities online that just don't work at all with scanning. But I looked at these screens for streaming, and then I just thought about it a lot. How many buttons do I need? How many switches do I need for someone to be independent on Netflix? And the answer is 6. And here they are. You need the 4 directional arrows. You need a way to go back one screen. And you need a way to say, okay. You need those 6. If you don't have all of those 6, you're not going to be able to operate a streamer unless you're in scanning mode. Scanning mode, usually within Apple TV, it's built in, switch control, just like switch control on the iPad. And not everybody has that, though. That's one of the only streamers that has that built in. I'm trying to think if anybody else has switch control built into their streaming box, like Roku or Chromecast, but they don't. Apple's the only one that actually has it built in. Yeah. Anyway, this box can be, these days we use Bluetooth. We started with infrared, but now we use Bluetooth completely, so that it doesn't have to be line of sight, where the back of this box has to be lined up with the front of your streaming box, like the Roku box. I personally like the Roku Express for $29 measly. I've used it for years. I have one of the first generation. It still works wonderfully. It's so much less money than all the rest. And it works with my boxes. That one is infrared. The Apple TV is the Bluetooth one. That's right. Some of the others are Bluetooth too. But the Roku Express is only $29. Works great with all the streaming services, cheap as heck. And it works with my boxes through infrared. So in that case, you do need the back of the box pointing in the general direction of the front of the Roku box. Same thing with the Apple TV. No, we go through Bluetooth for Apple TV. So here, this is, I don't remember, might be my, Google network. So this is similar to the guide that you might have for cable. Now, cable is what I call channel-oriented TV, where you and I, remember, just channel up and channel down. Those are the only buttons you need, pretty much, to be independent. Maybe power also. There we go. Beautiful. So here we have the analogous channel-oriented box. And you can see the need for far fewer buttons in order to be independent. They only need power, maybe not even that. And then they need channel up and channel down, and maybe only one of those. Inside of these boxes, I put a remote that I've chosen. The remote that I've chosen for channel-oriented ones can remember 15 favorite channels. Most of your remotes can remember a favorite list. Rather than have to go through 1,000 channels with channel up, you can just go up to 15, and then it wraps around to whatever you program for channel 1. So that's a real important feature, that whatever remote is inside that box, or whatever electronics you're using, for channel oriented at least, that you have favorites. Really important. And the other company that I'm aware of that makes a box of this nature or something like this, there's no favorites. So you're stuck going 500, 501, 502, 503, and you don't want that. Anything else up here that we want to look at? No, I don't think so. We've covered that, covered that, covered that. So we've delved into the TV a little bit. We've dived into the game controllers. We got really pretty in depth in that. And we've delved into the music right there. See if I could find this one. There we go. Came right up. Beautiful. So this is Dan. Dan passed, unfortunately. He's not with us anymore. Motorcycle accident. He's about 55 here, I would say. And he's using a big button plugged into my Bluetooth speakerphone. So this is just like something before there was Bluetooth built into cars. It used to be a speaker that you'd attach to your visor. They still make them. And I adapted that. So you put a switch in and you can hang up or connect Siri or voice control on an Android phone. Just by clicking the switch, it puts you into voice command mode. Then you could say, call mom or call work. And it does. And then if you want to hang up, you click the switch again. And so this is my entry into the phone. Nobody else makes anything of this nature. It wasn't and hasn't been a very popular item. I don't publicize my stuff that much because I'm always making new stuff, and I publicize the new stuff. And I wish I spent more time on all these literally several hundred creations that I've made, inventions, adaptations over the years. But he got really good use of this setup right here. Oh, that's it right there. He's got an iPhone, and his audio is going in and coming out of this speakerphone right here, so it's fairly private. He didn't want to use an earpiece. He's in a long-term care situation. And he was just using the switch to get the Siri to work on the iPhone and be able to hang up when he wanted. So we've covered it right there. I'm going to stop right now and I'm going to go into the chat area. And if there's anybody that has any questions, they can either speak them, I believe, or
Yeah.
type into the chat area.
Yeah, it looks like you already have a few questions that came in. The first being anything to say about switches for the adult ALS population who don't use Xbox?
Well, let me get, there we go, good. Chat, get rid of that. I focused on Xbox since that was when Reagan, trying to remember the person that first initially contacted me. Reagan, who was that person?
Jessica.
Jessica, that was when Jessica and I first talked. This was the subject that either she or I suggested or decided upon. So that's why I focused a lot on this. But we also covered the other three areas of what we would call these days electronic aids for daily living, or EADL is the current term to be used with insurance companies to get funded, rather than the old term of what were they called? ADL? Activities of daily learning, ADL. But it became electronic aids for daily living. That's what we'd use if we wanted to get them funded by insurance companies or Medicare. So we've covered three of those other areas. And we haven't covered computers at all. That's a discussion in and of itself. We haven't covered iPads. If anybody has any specific questions about either the four topics that I did cover or partially cover, or they have a simple question about the other area of computer or iPad, please ask away. Otherwise, to generally go into using a switch to control an iPad, like I say, that's a discussion in and of itself that we can do at another Zoom meeting, or they can contact me directly. But this would not be the forum we'd want in order to go into detail on questions of that nature.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then another question, do you do any voice activated controls for those without use of their hands?
The only one that I do is the controller that I just showed you with Dan, where the switch activates Siri, or as I said, the analogous voice controlled option within Samsung Android phones. And all this does is put you into command mode. It wakes your device up and it puts you into voice command mode. And then your voice goes into here, and that Bluetooth wise gets connected to the iPhone. And then you can do commands and dictation also. You can use your voice to do that. There are some voice controlled remotes for TV, even some of the ones that are by the companies themselves, like Cox or Roadrunner, the companies that actually provide the TV service or the internet service. And most people don't use those features of voice control. There's only one, I think, that's still around. Let's find out. I'm going to go to Google. The only one that I remember that had staying power was one called Voice Commander. Let's see if it's still made. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it. No, these are other things. Voice Commander was a remote similar to any of your remotes, but it also had the early ability, probably 20 years ago, to listen to your voice and do things based upon your voice. I never got involved in that because almost all of my customers, users, people that I work with, they have issues with all of the muscles of their body, including their vocal fold. And so they're affected physically with their arms as well as their voice. And most of voice control, even to this day, even on computers, with something as ubiquitous as a naturally speaking, that's the leader of voice control and voice dictation on PCs and Macs. Naturally speaking, all one word. It's available over the counter, and that works great. But it requires a voice that's close to typical. I don't like the word normal. Typical is a better word. So close to typical. If you're very far from typical, or if you're dysarthric, or you're breathy, a lot of air, those won't work with any type of voice control these days, because it's not like the old voice control in the early days where you would train the device to your exact way of saying it, and then it would get it pretty spot on. But they all work with huge data banks of data from different speakers, and then they try to average that out and find some type of typicality in there to do the voice control itself. So hasn't been a real, and as you can see, even with this product, which was a good product and it had staying power for a number of years, not made anymore. So that's not a thing anymore. Like I say, the cable box companies themselves usually or sometimes have that feature built in, but most people aren't even aware of it. Anything else?
I think that's it on here. Look on Facebook. And I guess I know you do switch adaptive call chimes as well. Because
That's right. For people that are for ALS, that's a very big product for us for ALS. Let me go back real quick here. I jumped off too quickly. And we're going to go back to my site. Go up to the top. I'd say for ALS, this is one of the two most popular products that I make. Very reasonably priced, $79. I choose very carefully. These are over-the-counter doorbells, remote doorbells, and I just very careful. I buy like 10 or 20 of these different ones, and I test and I test and I test till I get something super consistent, super good on batteries, and that I can actually, things are large enough inside here, the transmitter, inside the transmitter, that I can actually make connections to it. A lot of these days are using what's called micro solder, where they're just too small to solder to anymore, to attach things to. Everything's so tiny inside that it's put together with robotics. But I'm pretty careful with what I choose, and then we can plug one switch in. And for this one, the one I'm using these days actually it's battery operated. It lasts about a year for the transmitter. And as you can see, you plug a switch in of any type. And I'm using a positioning arm here that plugs into the transmitter. And then the receiver actually plugs into an AC outlet anywhere you want. It instantly connects. It doesn't need pairing. 100%, as far as I can see, reliable. We offer a ton of these. Yeah, here's the one we use these days. There we go. And you can see the AC plugs right there. And I can't remember one time in probably several thousand of these where somebody has told me that it's not reliable, the batteries don't last long enough, it breaks, anything of that nature. My radar goes up and I'm going to want to attend to it right away and pick another device or check out my adaptation, see if I've got to use some type of reinforcer somewhere. But any feedback from you guys out there is completely listened to, and I follow your suggestions to the T. But this is easily the most popular product for ALS. Another one for ALS that's popular is a way of using one or two switches to operate a computer. It's built into the iPad these days. I can't say they copied me, but it's very close to my cross scanner, where the line comes down and the finger goes across to pick an XY point on a computer. Just touch on this subject a little. And Apple's switch control does something very similar. I can't say they stole it from me because, they're Apple. What am I going to do? But I invented this back in 1996, long before Apple was doing anything with iPads, iPods, or anything of that nature. And I've kept this on PC. It's still one of the only games in town to use one or two switches to control the PC completely. Like I say, iPad has it built in. Samsung's Androids have something built in similar to this, but not exactly the same. Let's see. And the last one that's popular for ALS populations is this little puppy right here. For years, I had just been advising people on how to make these themselves, but nobody did. They should, but they don't. So I started offering this for a measly $29. And it's basically what would be called in the old days a universal pointer. And mine is made with a capacitive, oh no, it's a conductive. The stylus itself, the red piece there, conducts electricity from your hand, or actually from the iPad or the iPhone to your hand, which acts as a ground. The electronics, we call it a sink, S-I-N-K, like a sink that you'd wash dishes in. And one of the nice things about this is that it not only acts as a pointer for like keyboards and things, but as you can see down here, it's capacitive, it's connective, so that the iPhone, the iPad, the Samsung, whatever it is, it thinks that a finger is touching it. So it sees it as something live, because it wouldn't work with like a pencil. If you ever tried using the eraser on a pencil to control an iPod or iPad or anything, you'll find that it just doesn't work. I'm going to say something else. Oh yeah. And then right here, as you can see, the strap not only goes around the palm, but once again, listening to you guys, somebody said it's just not stable enough around the palm if they open their hand at all. And so I made the strap extra long so it goes around their wrist also, and that increases the stability of the pointer greatly by going around two parts of the hand rather than one. So that's very unique. All the universal cuff, that's what they were called. On the universal cuff, they only went around the palm, and that's what made them unstable unless you were really fisting it. But for me, we can have less of a grip on it because of the strap going around the wrist. And that'll do it. Anything else, Jessica? Reagan, sorry.
You're fine. Nothing else that I see, but if anything does come in over the next couple days, we will be replaying this presentation at 2 today. So some more questions might be coming in. I will go ahead and reach out to you directly and ask away. So thank you so much, RJ, for this wonderful presentation about gaming and other electronics, technology, ways to control your computer and smartphone and music. It was wonderful, and exactly what our families were looking for. So I really appreciate you coming today and presenting. And that's going to be it.
Well, you're very welcome. And I'm going to leave the room now and bid you guys adieu. I figure I've got 5 more years in this field before I'm going to retire, turning 70 next month. I'm going to go to 75 if I can make it here. So a lot of people say, no, don't ever retire, RJ, because I know things that literally nobody on earth knows. So I'd love to chat more with you. I put my email address in the chat box there. Thanks for this opportunity.
Awesome.
Bye, Reagan. Bye, everybody.
Bye.